All right, now I am recording on OBS, so since I'm here, I have to worry about doing mine last or in order now. Okay. Sneaking into Twitch for the work. Yes. No, this is weirdly enough. This has kind of worked out. Okay, cool. All right. Well, Caleb, I already planned in a specific order, so you're still gonna go last. That's just how this one's gonna be. All right. So, really sorry for the delay. OBS is being an absolute piece of shit. And hopefully this will be fixed by next week. And by tomorrow, because I've got other streams I need to do this week. But yeah, so welcome everybody to another round of Web Wednesday. Sacrifice your firstborn, nice. Again, at the top of this, just because I always want to make sure that this being said, I am not affiliated with Webtoon in any way, shape, or form. I am not affiliated with the Webtoon Call to Action contest in any way, shape, or form. These opinions are my own. They are based off of my experience as a writer, a professional writer, and as someone who has studied comic books for most of their life. So this is just me spouting my knowledge on things. This will not affect anything with the contest whatsoever. Okay, with all the preamble being that, let us begin with our first comic webtoon, Rest in Peace by Zobraloz, lols, however the hell you're supposed to say that. You want to make a New Zealand webtoon community and never can find anyone? I'm sorry. I am most definitely not in New Zealand, but there has to be people there. I was listening to there was like a webtoon hangout on Twitter yesterday where I think one of the creators was maybe not New Zealand, but they were certainly Australian. And so like it seems to be in that area at the very least. So there has to be more. Yeah, I saw your Twitter post. Well, like even isn't Lore Olympus? Yeah, Lore Olympus is made by someone in Australia. So like they're there. Like they're in your area. That being said, like, you know, New Zealand and Australia being in the area. Oh, she's New Zealand? Oh, okay. Well, then that's just me not being able to pick out the Aussie and the Kiwi accents. And I am lesser for it. All right, so Rest in Peace. This is 5 years after a catastrophic car event. Sarah is haunted by a crow demon and decides to finally do something about it. We are the Oceanic Appendix, I see. Loading up my notes real quick. Gonna put them over here so I can remember what to talk about. Are still really different for a community because the population difference is much harder to find New Zealand creators than Aussie creators, though. It's harder to find New Zealand creators? Well, I mean, I have very little connection to that area of the world, period. The only things that your population, yeah. We have more crows and sheep than people. Oh my God. Oh, that is. I feel for that. I unfortunately have never lived in that context. I've lived in like two of the biggest. I've spent most of my life in the two biggest states in one of the biggest countries of the world. But yeah, all right, so you guys talk that out. Here we go. So this story is basically a single mother and her child are attacked by a demon, and her mother fends off said demon, but there's a twist at the very end. So the story on this I felt was interesting, but there was kind of like not a tonal inconsistency, but there's sort of a characterization inconsistency with the mother, where she is, there's some specific nitpicks that I'll get into later, but she's written as sort of like an exhausted single mom kind of a character, which I think is really interesting, especially for like an action series where she's having to protect her kid. where she's just exhausted and kind of tired. It reminds me of sort of like later seasons of Buffy, where she just sort of doesn't want to be the Slayer anymore. But her lines, like how she talks like an action hero. So she has like she has this sort of determined, like, no one will hurt my child. She has these really like strong, like declarative moments, but her actions sort of show someone who's exhausted and like isn't really thinking straight. Like here she kind of like she's talking about how she'll never let a demon hurt her child. She's sort of very slowly and passively getting ready to fight this thing, this demon right here, this guy, and then in sort of her very sort of like, for lack of a better word, lazy approach to this, then it gets to her kid and is about to get eaten. So in her actions kind of endanger her child inadvertently. And while I don't think that that's necessarily a bad idea as a story, it seems like she's supposed to be more of an active protagonist, but her actions are more of like a passive or reluctant protagonist. And so I kind of would have liked, like, I think if she was supposed to be a reluctant, lean hard into that reluctant, and and kind of like and I think that'd be really interesting for like a reluctant hero protecting their kid. Or if she's supposed to be active, then like, kind of make her more determined in her actions and more direct and things like that, and not just kind of this passive internal thought stuff, like get up and go and don't dawdle around. I will say, in terms of like readability and stuff, there isn't a huge difference in the word bubbles and text for that differentiate between like spoken dialogue and internal dialogue. Like it's a bit easier to see on the computer because the pictures are bigger, but like this sort of like slightly blotchy versus this cleaner but still kind of like rough word balloon, there isn't a huge enough difference for me to kind of like immediately see that this is an internal thought and this is a spoken thing. So when I was reading them, they kind of blended together as like spoken or like internal when one was supposed to be another. And so that could have been cleared up quite a bit. Like especially if like the fonts were like just changing the font or something like that, just some sort of something in the lettering or something in the balloon design that was just more distinct than just sort of like squiggles versus this, or like have like a really big darker line or different color. Because I love the blue and like black of this. I actually really, and just how simple it all is. Like I really love the blue on black and then the white later. So you don't, but like see here it's a bit more obvious because it's off, like a gray color and there's something to differentiate, but here it's just on black and it doesn't look that different from a word balloon. So that was a little confusing. There's another moment here which I kind of want to talk about, which is sort of like a Chekhov's gun sort of an idea, where we have this moment where the demon attacks her kid, she reacts, fights back, and then they start going at it. And then where is it? Yeah, so we have right here where it's just been this sort of like box of a room at this point. Like it's dark, there's no light. Here it's kind of here, but it's not super clear. I didn't recognize this for the first couple of, and I think just because it's like all blue and black and stuff. But that is supposed to be, that also is supposed to be a closed window, and it doesn't. And right now, it just sort of with the snow, it kind of looks open. There's no like reflection or anything. But this sort of sudden break right here and then jumping out was jarring to me because it was not super clear that there was actually a window in this room. Like this is hard to see on a phone. No location. I was kind of imagining a shack or something. Yeah, like the layout of the scene, like your set essentially, was not super clear, and it doesn't always have to be clear. I mean, like like in like sets on like sitcoms, like multicam sitcoms and stuff like that. Like they're just half rooms, It's just what you're going to see, but it's the important stuff that you're going to see. And if they need to like change an angle on something, then they'll like build something around it so that there's, a thing occupying a space where the camera will see. And so you don't have to detail everything, but if there's going to be something like someone's going to get pushed out of a window, or an object's going to get used, or just some part of the environment is going to play into the story, then you need to kind of place it where it's going to be important and make sure that the audience sees it. Because I can't really see this part on a phone. And even now, like looking at it now, I was scrolling past it and I almost missed it. So like this is a mix of also like just the design choice of having like the blue and black and just like a little bit of white and surprise of color, which I think is great, but I think just like maybe like some yellow or something right here to show some exterior light coming in, or just something else to make this more apparent. But the set of this is not super clear. And so sometimes the action is just sort of feels like, oh, I guess this is happening. Like it's just sort of hard to follow the pace of what's going on. And there's another inconsistency later on that I want to talk about. It's way down here. So this panel right here. So before this, she is flat on her back. She has the axe. We just sort of have this chop, and then the head comes off, and then she's flat on her back. Yes, I am recording, so I'll be putting all of these on YouTube eventually. I'm really bad at re-uploading to YouTube, but eventually this will be on there. But yeah, so we see she's flat on her back here. She grabs her knife, chop, done. But then here, the angle of the knife, or the angle of the axe is wrong. It's actually backwards to what it would be if she had sort of done this motion. Instead, it looks like she's readying for another attack. So either the attack didn't happen before, she just like flipped it off or flipped it around in a panel that we didn't see. Oh no, that's cool. Yeah. I'll post these up later. But yeah, so this was just this thing caught me off guard. I was actually confused as to what was happening here when I first read it, because I thought that she was like going to attack something else again or something, but no, she's just supposed to be exhausted, lying on the ground after having killed this thing. And it's this one stupid thing. It's this one, it's just the way that the axe was drawn that kind of implies a different action that's going on in the scene than what is supposed to be happening. And then there was another thing within the story. Hello. Oh, hey. Hello. We are talking about your work right now. Zobra lols. We were just, yes. We were kind of getting into some of the end stuff, and just as a reminder, we are in the chat in the video chat, not the text chat right there. I'm gonna delete that channel. There we go. Yeah, that's why I forgot that there is a actual like chat in the stream thing. So that's why I created that thing. But yeah, so here we are. But there was a thing early on in the story that, right? Yeah, same. I always forgot about the chat too. But there's a bit of dialogue here, where it's, I had a dream before. It means they're here. I'd rather not look at him, but it knows that I'm awake. So like the there and then the him, when I'm reading that, to me, that's registering as two different entities. But as the story goes on, like it seems like she's only talking about this thing. And so when I was first reading this, I thought that the demon was sort of like was kind of like a pact demon thing. Like it was a weapon for her. It was, or like a curse thing that she was a part of, and that this was going to be something that she used to fight other monsters. Just given the pronouns that she uses here in the beginning. And then it was a real, and because she's so blasé around this thing initially, that it also kind of contributed to this idea that like, oh, okay, she's used to this thing. It's like she doesn't like it, but she needs it or something. And then all of a sudden it attacks her baby. And then you find out that like this thing is actually a monster that's hunting them down. Then it was certainly shocking, which I think was kind of like the effect it was going on, but it also raised a bunch of questions of just like, if she knew how dangerous this was, then why was she being so callous around it, or why was she being so slow to act? And it was just sort of like, it was an initial like explosion of like, oh shit. And then a bunch of questions of sort of like logic of how this sort of flowed. So I think if there was either like, if she treated this thing more seriously, or if there was just something in how she referred to it that made it so that she was talking about this and this was the dangerous thing. I think that would have cleared up the sort of flow of information there. And then I do have to say that the end twist, so there's a twist at the very end, where after I love this shot right here. This is so cool. Just the white and then the blue and then the, just all this black. It reminds me of something that like a movie design, like a poster design or something. And I can't remember what it is, but it's just simple. It's just blue, black, white, and then this person. But I just think this is really cool. Hellboy a little bit, but there was like a movie poster or something that kind of had this sort of like sketchy on solid color thing that it's just like, it reminds me of that aesthetic, which I really enjoy. Like to me, it feels like maybe Saul Bass. That's not. Oh God, that name is ringing bells. Hang on. Ooh, vague. I think you're onto something actually here. Birdman. Oh, it may have been Birdman. Hang on. Man. I don't know. To me, it evokes this idea of like a like kid with a sketchbook kind of a thing. Like this is sort of a this is sort of like a rough, not immature, but like sort of child sketch or something like that. But to me, that because it evokes that, it sort of gives also a sense of vulnerability, because it's like child thing and then monster beating the shit out of a single mom. And I was like, oh God. So for me personally, this was really effective and I really liked it. But there was a twist at the very end, which I'm going to spoil. But yeah, so here, I wanted to make them, at the start, I wanted to make them seem like she didn't know what it was, and I was trying to use more they pronouns, but I forgot and shifted all the words. I'm gonna say this. It kind of felt like that. It kind of felt like you just that like there was an idea there, and then you abandoned it and then moved on. I wasn't sure about that because that's a pretty big assumption to make, so I wasn't going to mention it in the review. But now that you've confirmed it, I kind of sensed that. But then he shows up, this guy. Pleasure to see you again, my love. And then it just sort of fades to black. And this was not really set up very well. This sort of the idea of another character here. I think the attempt was there in the beginning with her talking about the dream, and then the dream meaning that something is close. But then the confusion as to what the monster, the crow monster was, and then the fight, and then realizing what the crow monster is, and then dealing with that, like the fact that all of a sudden this person shows up. I have forgotten that piece of information because the actions and the stuff that everyone was dealing with, it kind of showed that it was irrelevant, that it wasn't tied together in any way. If there was something that connected the monster to a higher thing, every time I have this dream, I know he's close and he sent something after me or something like that, just sort of denoting the existence of something else. It's okay to kind of like forget that specific information, but if the twist isn't connected to anything else in the story, then it just feels tacked on. It doesn't feel earned or effective. It just sort of feels random. And so I think that there was an attempt to have that in there, but I don't think it was that successful. So this twist ending just sort of felt like it was put on in the last minute and wasn't super effective. But all in all, I really liked this. I liked the dark tone that it all had. I really loved just the simple color scheme of the blue and black and white. Like I just love this. I don't know why. I can't specifically say why, other than it's just touching on something that I really like. But this was great. Action was great. I think if just like there was a bit more clarity in in some of the design, like the word balloon design and stuff, which I talked about earlier, and just sort of in design of like the sort of sets that everything is dealing with, then I think this would have been a bit more effective. But all in all, really good. I would love to see more of this. I am curious about this story. But yeah, so that is Rest in Peace. Just bam. Okay. Next, we're going into Cacophony of Gods by Nez. Now, Nez, you gave me two different web comics to talk about, Cacophony of the Gods and Wabah Hamba. So I'm going to talk about them sort of like next to each other or talk to them as sort of like one entity, because they both have like the same strengths and some of the same same sort of shortcomings, but with cool. All right. Hold on. Let me get back to here we go. So Xeon was born without a blessing, allowing him to become an open slate for the gods' voices as a holy priest. But when the forces of evil overpower the royal army, Xeon is the only one standing between darkness and the kingdom. Thanks. I'm not used to rendering all that, so I wanted to use simple colors. This is Zoberlal's. As for the Crow guy, I had a bigger story planned for an issue that came up but an issue came up with file limits and wanting to stir interest for a one shot. Thanks for the review. I'll keep that in mind. Awesome. Yeah. No, the Crow monster is really cool. But yeah, so we have Xeon, the priest, and we have this world. Every child is born blessing the gods. So this story essentially is sort of like where everyone has superpowers. One person doesn't have superpowers, and then but turns out he has all the superpowers. Which can be a lot of fun. I will say that that there's a couple of instances in the story where like sort of the logic of the ideas that are being talked about doesn't kind of line up, and threw me for a loop a little bit. So here we have this sort of great exposition here. Just sort of like how the world works. Every child is born blessed by one of the gods. Some are blessed with elemental powers, extraordinary abilities. Others have specific talents. So here we're giving like things to expect in the story, as far as like superpowers and Kamehameha blasts and all that other fun stuff. And then once in a blue moon, a child is born without any blessings, giving them no special powers or talents. Once in a blue moon, I'm gonna nitpick on this just because I'm an asshole. But like the phrase of blue moon like exists because here on Earth very rarely the moon will appear blue in the sky. Like it's denoting like it's derived from something that actually happens here. And so that turn of phrase is so specific that it made me question of like, oh, okay, does this happen in the same world? Like, does this world have the same context happen in this world that led to the creation of Blue Moon being a turn of phrase, or at least I think that's how that turn of phrase came. I don't know if it's based off of like a story or something, but I think it's just sort of like a hunter's moon where occasionally it's just really, really blue. And so like that, I understand what it's going for. Like the idea is getting across as being effective, but for me, and I think this is just me, that line was so hyper specific that it just sort of like threw me. It just made me like question a bunch of stuff about the world. but yeah, so then it's once in a blue moon child is born without blessings, giving them no powers as just means communion. And it's like as an open slate, the child can listen to the gods' voices and channel their holy powers to heal people. So here we have something that's like a bit of a discrepancy in what was just said, where once in a blue moon, a child is born without any blessings, so they have no special powers or talents. But then we find out that because they have no talents, they still get superpowers from the gods. Where it seems to be like sort of D&D rules, where instead of a wizard channels magic through, like ritual or like latent magic around them, or like a sorcerer, just sort of like innate wild magic, or however, what archetype you use. And then you have like a cleric whose powers come from a god. It's like when you're playing them, what you can do is the same thing. It's just sort of like it's sort of what you're able to do and how you're able to do it is different. But here we're setting up this thing where like here are these like rare sort of anomalies that exist where they can't participate. What you would assume is that they can't participate in anything. And then you're like, no, they can. They just kind of go about it differently. And so this, like, they're functionally not any different from anybody else. And so like the core, the nut of the idea of like some people get blessings, and then some people, and then some people just have to like talk, having a difference there is a really good idea. But I think specifically what's going on here, there's not enough of a difference to make it seem, other than just like he's a cleric, like functionally different from whatever else is going on. This is further compounded right here where we see the wizard and the knight, where when they go into battle, see right here when they go into the battle, where they sort of they sort of evoke their champion gods essentially, where they sort of activate their whatever powers that they were given by the god. But to me, like communion, like speaking to a god, is like, yelling their name and saying some sort of prayer and then being able to access the power. To me, that like read as communion, not that this was sort of like special gift that they were given. I kind of, when it was described as like they were blessings, I kind of thought of it as like X-Men powers, where it's just something that they can do, that the ability to do that was given to them by whatever deity, but they can just they can do it on their own whenever they want. Whereas here, that may be the case, but the fact that they're evoking them and the fact that they're like they're communing with them in this moment, to me read it like, oh, I guess they still have to like receive the god's blessing or permission before they can use their powers or something like that. And so it was like, okay, well then what's the difference between them and this guy? And it's just like, it's just their power set. It's just that he has like, healing abilities and like barrier spells and stuff like that, whereas these guys have attack spells. And that seemed to be the only functional difference. But there's, but this world is supposed to be set up where there's this schism of there are these rare people and then there's everybody else. But as I'm reading this, I'm not seeing a strong functional difference between these characters. And so it was just, I kept waiting to see if there was a bigger thing here, and it wasn't really there. Not that it can't be with this setup, but I wanted there to be a bigger difference to sort of set him apart from everybody else. But functionally right now, the only thing that really makes him different from any of the rest of the cast is that he just has healing spells. Who is this webtoon? This is Cacophony of the Gods by Nez. Yes, I wanted to pull up their full name. Hold on, I have the full name. Nezkovso. Yes, Nez. But yeah, this is one of Nez's entries. His entries. So the fact that there isn't like a huge difference, other than he's just a priest, other than he's just a cleric, just kind of made me wonder, like, okay, well then why is it important? Why is this information important? If he's functionally not different from anybody else, then why is it important to introduce your world where they're, saying that he's special because of this, when I'm not seeing any special or uniquely special things about him? There are things later in the story that's, that like, because he gets his powers by communing with gods, he sort of games the system and is able to like access everybody's powers. And that is a cool idea. Like but it just raises a bunch of other questions about that too, where if he can, like, it happens so easily in the story, like there's no conflict around it, that his ability to like sort of using his communion ability to get access to all the other spells that everybody has, then it sort of begs the question of like, okay, well, if it was so easy for him, then why has no one else done it? Like, why aren't all people like him just just having access to all powers? Like sort of like what it seems to be is that like if someone like him, like if a blank slate like him gets his powers by communing with gods, then he just has access to everything, and that's what makes him different from everybody else. But it's trying to but the story is sort of proposing that this is a unique thing to this one guy, rather than what people like, rather than like the thing that he is in the story, the sort of rare thing that he's in the story. I'm getting lost in my own words here, but essentially it was just that there wasn't. He didn't seem different enough. He didn't seem special enough for me to understand why we're focusing on him, or why the story was introducing him as being special, functionally special. And then the fact that he got like everybody's powers at the end seemed so easy to me that it was like, okay, well then why hasn't anyone done this before? Why are we just hearing about this now? And I think adding a conflict to that would have been interesting, where like where like people kind of know that it's a thing, but there's some sort of taboo, or there's some sort of like cost, or there's just some sort of reason as to why you shouldn't do it, and then in the end he's just like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway. And then now we're seeing him sort of live in defiance of this norm. That I think would have made that transition more impactful, but as of now he just seems kind of broken, and I don't know why. There's also a moment later on. The action is great in this, by the way. There was something that I've mentioned a couple of times before in the other reviews that I've done, where it's like, especially with like the sort of more flashy like power-based stuff, is that it's a lot of people just sort of standing, and then the sort of designs of the effects are sort of doing the work in kind of creating like the tension or motion of what's going on. Here we have a lot of people just throwing hand blasts and magic, but there's a lot of movement, and speed lines and impact lines, and so like in addition, and dynamic poses, and like right here, like he's doing this cool superhero pose here, and so like what we're seeing visually has a movement and an interesting action taking place, not just someone standing and then the effect doing all that work. Because like just having sort of a really stiff, just like a really stiff character doing something cool around it kind of takes away from the impact or power, or speed, or whatever it is that you're trying to evoke in the scene. So this is all done. So the action is really done well here. And I love speed lines, and I'm so happy that there's like speed lines are like they're all over here, and Wabah as well, and I'm very happy about that. This is cool. But here we have like a little bit of a philosophical debate, where like this guy notices, because Priest Man is not happy, and is sort of complaining about, if I had power, I could do all this. I could do a better job than everybody else. And he senses, the sort of the schism that's forming, and is trying to exploit it. So he's, and then he's trying to get him to kind of abandon defending his friends, or his allies, and I protect them. I fight evil is essentially what his answer is that I'm not going to do what you want me to do because I fight evil. And then there's this question of, well, what is evil, like what constitutes evil, just sort of like the relativity of like what is good, what is evil, all this other stuff, and he's like, I'm here to eradicate the selfishness of humans, and that's and then you call me evil for that. But then he goes into you, and the attempt here is to describe the priest as if he has some sort of like like he's some sort of foil to him in some way, where he's just like, you're just like me because you're doing this. But all he's doing is just describing his situation. it's like a priest like you serves the kingdom and people without a shred of your own personal desires. From the day you were born, you were chained down to them whenever you chose to or not. So he's just saying that, like, I am, like, why am I evil for wanting to eradicate humans because they're selfish and stupid? Whereas you are just kind of forced to do your job by them. Like, that's not a direct comparison. And so it's like, which of us is more evil than the other? So it's like, so one's talking about, like, action that he's taking, and then he's talking about just someone's situation, not anything about their agency. So the ideas that the ideas that are being juxtaposed here don't really mesh. And so then the conclusion of, like, which of us is more evil seems strange. Like, it just seems sort of like, oh, I guess we were talking about this then. Like, I thought he was going to go into, judging by, like, his situation. Oh, hello, UchiQQ. Hello, new person. We are talking about Cacophony of Gods by Nez. But yeah, because he was talking about, like, his situation, I thought he was going to go into this argument about, like, full well why I would be wanting to kill humans because you also suffer from them, like, how bad they can be too, or something like that. But instead his argument is like, we're no different than each other. And it's like, well, you're not like compare and contrasting yourself. Like, it's just sort of two different ideas being put together and then being like, see how they connect. And it was just like, not really. And so that was and the reason why I bring it up is because it was a big point in the story to have this kind of this is sort of setting up his journey, this sort of dichotomy here as a character, and it just wasn't effective. I could get what the attempt was, where of just sort of, like holding a mirror to someone and saying, like, ha, you're not, you think I'm evil, but I'm just like you, or I'm more like you than you would be, than you're comfortable with, or something like that. And just sort of talking about, like, what makes evil, or shifting your perspective changes what you think evil is. But the idea how it's being played with here wasn't super effective, and so it just kind of came across as odd and incomplete to me. And then like I said before, the twist at the very end where he just says fuck it and then starts sort of multi-classing into everything and getting everybody's abilities is fun. Excuse me. Like, it's a really fun twist. It makes sense with his power set. And I like that, but it's so easy for him to do, like, there's just so little conflict with him doing it that it kind of begs the question of, like, okay, well, why hasn't he done this before? Like, if this was so easy to do, then why is this an important moment and not just and treat it as if, like, a big shift in the status quo, rather than just a thing that he could do. And so I think if there was just, I think there needed to be some sort of reason as to, like, some sort of barrier to that, that he would have to overcome in order to be able to do this, and then like the story would be living with the consequences of that or something along those lines. But yeah, so we have, and so then we have just, again, really great action. This is all really good. And then he's no more Mr. Nice Priest. I'm going to use all the gods. And then next, Wabah Hamba the Plague. So again, Nez, you got a really good sense of action. And I love speed lines. Love me some speed lines. I think there's a couple here that's just like something like this, I think, is really cool, where like this shot is not a lot of interesting stuff is happening right now, and it doesn't need to because they're just waking up, but they're being woken up suddenly and dead of sleep, and there's a lot of urgency, and just adding these speed lines sort of adds tension to what would normally be like a mundane thing. And like here too, where like now everything has a motion going this way. So we kind of like know where everybody's running. But this, I jumped into this too soon. Hang on. Let's see, and forgive me if I pronounce these wrong. The Hudokus or the Hudoks, appear from the ground and destroyed everything in their path like a giant plague of locusts. Humanity has fallen into survival mode where it is kill or be killed. Combat medic Fu Xiao and fighter Topon have to hold the front line and protect the remaining city behind. So yeah. So that is this story. And this is basically a combat medic and a soldier get drunk, or at the very least the medic gets drunk, gets blackout drunk, wake up together as their base is being attacked, and the medic has no memory of of this person at all. He got that drunk, and then it's them dealing with the attack and then dealing with the fallout of getting drunk and waking up next to somebody. I will say that the device of so we're not reviewing it because that was a joke. Oh, okay. So you did have 3, but one of them is a joke. I'm kind of curious about that one now because you did really good jobs with these two. But I will say that the sort of like not device. What am I trying to say? The sort of like plot point of the medic like having no memory of the soldier. Shack Attack. Okay. Oh my god, it's called Shack Attack. Oh god, now I have to see it. But the idea of him like waking up in the middle of the attack and like having no memory of the person, like like who the hell like he wakes up next to this person is like, who are you and why are we sleeping together? That didn't land for me at all. And the reveal that like they just got drunk that night and slept together, and then later on this character reveals that like he had like promised to marry him once the war was over or something. And then that like further complicates their relationship. But there really is no setup for them like looking drunk. These like when I read this looks like 2 people who just like consensually went to bed together and then woke up. So I was so confused by this note, by like, who are you and why are we sleeping together? Like there was no evidence or breadcrumbs to show any instance of them being hungover or drunk or anything. That when it gets revealed later that he got drunk and like proposed, essentially, like it just made no sense to me. Even in the bedroom scene right here, like there is just like a bottle down here. But if these guys got like blackout drunk, like I want to see evidence of that, like disheveled. Oh, is that a bottle too? Oh, okay. I guess that is also a bottle. But even then, like there'd just be, like bottles and cups and just like disheveled, and like he'd be, he would be physically hungover. Like he'd probably have like puffy eyes, and like physically he wouldn't be at 100%. If he got blackout drunk and then was woken up suddenly. And so like there's just a lot of there was a lot of things that you could have done to visually have shown that to give me some sort of indication that he's impaired in some way. Because I thought like he just woke up and had amnesia. Like I was very confused. And it was just like, but he knew so much about the monsters and about the war, and he just knew, like he knew what to do about being a doctor, that I was just very confused as to what was going on this whole time. So like that one thing, that sort of lack of information about that one thing about the story, like really just kind of kept this from being understandable for me. Like I just kept being confused as to what was going on and like why, like the who, what, where, when, and why of stuff, just because I didn't know like what would, like that initial scene was just so weird to me. Let's see. There's a couple of moments here that I'm going to nitpick, just because I'm a writer and I nitpick and I'm an asshole. But let's see, where is it? Here we go. Humankind fought against them with little victories and many losses. This is the same thing. Little victories implies many losses, and many losses implies little victories. You're kind of like, the phrase is doing double duty on itself. You don't need that. And so like, just either rephrase, like either introducing some new idea in this phrase or removing one of those things would have made that a lot more impactful rather than just sort of feeling redundant. Um, and then same sort of here. It's a never-ending battle. It is war. These phrases are also kind of doing double duty on themselves, and so it just sort of feels, if it was deliberate, where there's just sort of like a, which I think this is what it was going for, where it was just sort of be like an escalation in terms, where like, there's battles and then a war is like a sequence of battles, but like it's a never-ending battle is the same effectively kind of the same thing as it's a war. And so like, just sort of doing double duty here. Again, you could have like introduced something new, or you could have expanded on something different. And so these are just little redundancies in the writing that's kind of keeping it from reaching 100%. Let's see. And then, there's a moment where, like the pacing is great in this, especially, where like, like with, especially like just the gratuitous speed lines, which I'm all for, like just everything has a good sense of urgency, and like everything's moving forward, really brisk pace, like especially in the beginning, like there's just this there's this chaotic energy to everything. That was great. And then it all comes to a halt right around here. Like right here, where they just start talking and they have this sort of like little goofy banter moment between these two guys. Like this whole conversation just absolutely, like especially this panel, just completely derailed all of the momentum that you had been building, because you had really effectively created this sort of dangerous situation, where I was kind of like worried at how bad it was going to be. But apparently it's not so bad that these characters can have like a goofy aside with each other, where they can sort of have like a some like rom-com moment in the middle of fighting a monster that I think is still alive. Does he? Yeah, it's still alive. So there's a monster of it. Like there's a monster not 4 or 5 feet away from these guys, and they're over here just kind of like, bickering like it's a Judd Apatow movie. And it just completely ruined the pacing for me. So I think like moving this towards like the end where the tension of the combat is gone, I think would have been much better, much more effective, and it would have definitely made it flow a lot better. Because then we'd have like the tension of the combat and then the release, and then we feel comfortable sitting with just like, people talking, because there's not an imminent danger that would be interrupting them, and just sort of wondering why imminent danger has not interrupted this conversation. There was something else. So this is also another nitpick here, but he says squads will be there in a half an hour, which is a really long time in a fight. Fights are very, very quick. So like a half hour is like a death sentence at time, or could be a death sentence in time. So like treating it as if it's kind of nothing, it was a little weird. But then he talks about reinforcements showing up in a half hour, and then later on, like reinforcements show up here in this panel. So either he had faulty information and there were people on their way that were a lot closer, or that conversation lasted a half hour and the monster that was attacking them, or the monster that were attacking them, just kind of left them alone for a half hour. And that was just sort of like a timeline issue that I thought was really weird. But other than that, again, really strong entry. This was, and there were times where the comedy was effective. But this right here, I love the ending, where it just we've kind of had like this is a really effective use of our like pacing, where we have the sort of catharsis of the end fight, and then we go back to where these guys are bantering with each other, and then all of a sudden they get interrupted with the war again, and this guy's going to turn into a monster, and so then he gets killed before that can happen, and then we just have like this really dark, serious moment, and then kind of like go back to what was before. Like we have the release, the tension, then we go back to them being goofy. That was really effective. But yeah, so Cacophony, the Gods, and Wabah Hamba, the Plague. Both really strong entries, but they didn't quite come together in the way that I wanted them to. There was just some There was just some issues here or there that kind of kept it from really getting up to 100% for me. But otherwise, really good. Next, we have Galaxy Girls by T.A. Tuafel. And again, I apologize if I'm butchering anybody's name. Name or handle. I mean, God, I can't pronounce Nano's. I just call her by her name. I don't even try anymore. Teufel. Okay, thank you. So T.A. Teufel. X-Pops. Tis German. Ah, okay. Thanks. Pointers really helped me think about and showed me some areas where I missed because I've been. Yeah, no, that's like Nez. The idea. So you said the pointers really helped me and think and showed me some areas where I missed because I'd been staring at it for too long. That is what an editor does. Like that is why that's why editors exist, is because when you are so into something that you can't see the forest for the trees. Yeah, no, editors are wonderful, man. Well, like, and sometimes like test readers can also help. The thing with an editor is that like there's someone who their job is to understand how the thing that you're trying to make works. I'm not sure where to find an editor who specializes in webtoons. Well, I mean, any editor is better than no editor. Well, I take that back. Not any editor is better than no editor, but there's a lot of like, at the end of the day, you're writing, you're making a comic. Like a webtoon webtoon's more of a format than anything else. It's more of a platform. It's not a unique like medium or genre, or not unique enough for it to like really stand on its own as something that is like hyper specialized. Outside of like layout and things like that, story, pacing, all that other stuff. I talked about this in the writing workshop. There are different things to consider, but ultimately you're doing the same kind of thing, sequential storytelling. And so like just someone who understands comics would be good. Not even just like webtoons, but someone who just understands story would also be really good. I would need an editor who's also an artist who can help me panel layouts and make them more dynamic too. Yeah, I mean that is definitely a thing. I honestly would recommend looking at just like look at other webtoons, especially stuff in like the action contest, and just sort of see how they're doing. Like last week I talked about Fractal 10, like the layouts in Fractal 10 are fucking phenomenal. Fractal 10's amazing. And like I recommend, if you really want to like kind of figure out or just have like an idea of what you can do with layouts, like go and look at Fractal 10 and look at just look at the panel design and how it plays in with the background, all that stuff. It's really good. But anyway, back to Galaxy Girls by T.A. Teufel. I didn't read hold on. Ex-pop star Cassie has begun her journey to become the universe's strongest galaxy knight, but runs into more than her fair share of problems on her quest to become the best. Space marauders are attacking a nearby planet. It's up to Cassie for her and her teammates to protect the citizens. Too bad she was ordered not to fight. And then get back to the top. Okay, so this on the computer, this is a much more apparent. I'm just going to go into this thing real quick because it was something that was kind of an issue when I was reading it. This is a much more apparent like thing, like exposition bubble, but on the phone. Like there's much bigger space in between here and the ship, and this is at like the top of your phone. And you know how some webtoons, your phone for whatever reason will cut off like the first like 2 or 3 centimeters or something. And so like there's stuff that like you miss at the beginnings of stuff, where you have to like pull down the webtoon in order to see it. This one fits on the phone. Like it is definitely at the top, but because it's so far away from this, which is the interesting thing on that panel, or what I'm seeing, that I actually, when I first read through this, completely ignored this whole text thing. Like this just kind of, this didn't register to me at all. And I was instantly drawn to the ship, and then moved down here. And so like my first bit of exposition, I have to log off because I need to work. You're needed at work. Oh my god. Well, hey, I'm glad I got to your stuff before you had to go. I'm not going to be on much longer because I have a thing to do in about a half hour. So yeah, but I'll eventually have this up on YouTube for other people to see. But anyway, back to this. So my first bit of exposition was this panel, not this panel, and the only thing that really needed to be done is this thing needed to be moved lower, closer to the ship, so I knew it was more important, and it wouldn't be too far away where my eye was going, so that I wouldn't miss it. Because initially I was like, okay, why, it's sort of like, who are they? Why are they there? What's going on? And this little box explains all of that. Like this gives us the beginning context for the story. And so this is actually a lot more important than it just sort of being off in a corner, and it needs to be near the important image so that I register it as important, and also because I can go to the ship and then box, and I can read the box and know what's going on. Notes. But yeah, so I was kind of like, I was really confused. Also, there's also kind of like stuff about the story that I'm like, that just raised some questions for me, where it's like, if they are if they are there to inspect a potential attack on a city, why are they going in why are they going in undercover? Why and like in your description you say that she's ordered not to fight. Why are they not ordered to fight? Like, that makes no sense. They are, they seem to be a defense force. They're not the main team. Okay, see, that is information that would have made all of this more, that would have made all of this have more sense. If you had just said something about, it's a cadet okay, so it's a training mission. Okay. Avoid conflict, rescue only. Okay. See, that makes a lot of sense. And that actually contextualizes this is a lot better. But that being like this is a training mission or something, I don't think is actually stated here. Yeah, it just says mission report, rumors possible. 30 says, yeah, there's an imminent attack, and their team organized to go undercover and attempt to minimize human casualties, avoid conflict. Yeah, because we don't see a different team in the combat, and you don't specifically say that this is like a training team on a training mission. They're just randomly ordered to be to go in undercover and to do reconnaissance only. And so I'm like, okay, well, why? Like, they're there to protect the citizens, and they end up protecting the citizens, but they're getting in trouble for it. And so there was like that little bit of information would have actually made a lot more sense for what's going on. And so I'm certain, because you said it, like, you knew what you were doing when you're going into it, but you may have missed it in getting it onto the actual comic, or I may have missed it. And it could have been just like me as a reader, or like it wasn't presented in a way that like I registered it, but I don't think it's actually in here at all that they're not the main team, and that it says she's a cadet in training, but that like, everybody else with her, I guess, is also like on a training mission. Ran out of space. Okay. All right, I'll give you that, because again, like there was a panel limit and there was a time limit on these things, so that's understandable. But like, that is key information for me to kind of understand the context of this. So just a line of dialogue in one of these boxes, you could have said something where it's like, granted, the box would have been bigger, and you may not have had space to put it there, but like something right here where it's like, their team is authorized to intersect. Your team is authorized to go undercover to attempt mission casualties, something like that. Like, just denote that like they're a training team, and that there's other people handling the main issue of something. Just one little bit of information. I do love this. So this is a trope that I think is just funny, where it's like, you're going undercover and like nothing is changed about the characters other than they're wearing cloaks. I don't know why. This is a sci-fi thing. This is like, you see it all the time in military sci-fi, especially like Star Trek. Star Trek does a bit more, but like those types of shows where it's like, you're going to go in undetected and all they just have is like a hooded cloak, and everything else is normal. And I just think that's funny. And so I just like the fact that this is sort of continuing this idea that in order to blend in, I stole it from Star Trek and Star Wars. Yes. Yeah, this is what they fucking do. And so like I love the fact that this is sort of perpetuating the idea that like the only thing you need as an alien species on an alien planet to blend into any culture is just a fucking cloak, regardless of like how it looks. And I just think that's funny. And so like, I was talking about sort of like that missing information before, like what's happened, knowing that now, knowing that that this is like a training mission, knowing that they're not the main team, that there is another team out there doing other things. This makes a lot more sense. And this is a pretty solid story, but without that information, it's just kind of confusing and it seems haphazard and random. And so like that's sort of like a testament to how important context is for your story, where it's like, like what is the conflict? What is your character's relationship to that conflict? Like this is sort of why it can get important, because like all the stuff that's happening like is good and makes and it flows well as sort of like the beats of like a Super Sentai or Power Rangers moment of like a team monster shows up, bad guys show up, people come in and fight, some banter happens, all that stuff. Like all that stuff is happening and it's done effectively, but me not knowing like who they are and why they're there, like just made everything weird and confusing to me. And then we have the Marauders show up. I have to say, this person, whomever they are, does not look very upset that they are at knife point. This actually looks like they're kind of excited at being kidnapped. And so I had a little giggle here, because the lady doth protest too much, it seems, in this image. And I just thought it was funny. But then we have also, I'm going to call you out right. Yeah, right. He's like, oh, I'm finally getting stabbed. I'm going to call you out on this right now. Kidnapper Senpai, please notice me. That's funny. But like you made the gravest sin of you introduced a kaiju and then you never had a kaiju fight. Like after this panel, the giant sharp-toothed octopus alien monster never shows up again, and the rest of the webtoon I was like, where the fuck is this kaiju? I want to see a kaiju fight. Like you even frame it, you use it to frame your panels here, which is really cool, making this like a really big scene. Like just doing stuff like this really his name is Peanut. A-Team gets to deal with him. Okay. Well, here's the thing. We don't see A-Team at all. And we also don't see like the end result of him like being defeated or like tied up or something somewhere else. So like the whole time I was just like, what's going on with Peanut? Like, yes, more Peanut, all the Peanut. No, I love Peanut. But yeah, like that whole thing. But I was talking about here, just using an element in the image in the story to then start framing things, like really makes it seem important and makes this whole thing a lot bigger, because this is just 3 panels, but now it's being juxtaposed with, it's being framed with these guys' tentacles, so it's like, oh, this monster's huge, and like this is a lot more intense. So really effective stuff. And like like other stuff too, like like saying our top, like later on, like Cassie shows up to saves the day, and then we have this moment. Where are we? Here, where are you? Yeah, it's just like, I was totally helping citizens. Like you're clearly breaking protocol and smashing. Where it's like right here. Yeah, here we go. We're only supposed to exist in the evacuation. Like, because I don't know that there's another team, I'm like, so their job isn't to defend the citizens, it's just to help them get away from an attacking force. And so this was just very weird. And also I will say that like, Cassie does not, like she has, there's a bit of dialogue here where, she's like, you're not doing our job. And then she's saying, no, I didn't forget. I was totally helping the citizens. And it's like, you were clearly breaking protocol and smashing property. So she did break protocol. That was obvious. But she never breaks property. She doesn't, destroy any property damage or anything like that in this whole webtoon. So like that line, that retort didn't really make any sense to me. Or she just smashed the rail. Oh, I mean, I guess it... did she? I didn't notice. I actually went back and was looking for examples of her breaking property, and I didn't see anything. Is this rail supposed to be broken by this guy? Is that the idea here? I'm gonna let you type. And then I'm gonna take water. Okay. Well, then for me, visually, that's not super clear. I guess these are like breaking lines or something. To me, that looked more like it was, that's your fault for blurring it. Well, it wasn't, it's not, I think the blurring isn't helping. But I think if just like if there was a stronger impact here, yes, I'm assuming. Jed, okay, so Thea, you did the art and I guess wrote, and then Jed, you colored it. You wrote and drew it. Okay, yeah. So Thea wrote and drew it. Jed had Waffles, you colored it. Awesome. I do love the colors. They are very cute. But yeah, I would just say that like there's just not enough impact on the rail for me to register it as it being broken or damaged in some way. So like the blurring doesn't help because there's like in looking at it now and knowing that it's supposed to be broken, I can see some squiggles and stuff and the blurring obscures it, but there isn't nearly enough. Like over here is just fine. Like even like now I can kind of see where there's like a bend where he is and stuff like that, but because there's just like so little impact on the railing itself that I don't register that as broken. And that's actually a lot harder to see on a phone too. So because like part of this, you got to remember that the screen is tiny, and even though I'm reviewing these on a computer, I do my initial reads through on the phone. And so then we have the fights, and then I will say I don't know what's going on with her. Like she just kind of comes up out of nowhere. I don't know I don't know the importance of this sequence here because she just shows up and then fights them, and it doesn't add or subtract anything to the story. It just sort of happens because she even says that she's not a part of the Marauder group. She's just there and she just is wearing their colors because she thinks it looks cool. So it's like, okay, so she's not associated with the threat that they just stopped. Who is this girl? This whole encounter just seems random. And I will say about this with the sword, I didn't notice a sword anywhere on her person. Not that it needs to be because it's space, but there needed to be like one or two panels of her like pulling the sword or summoning the sword or just doing something to tell me that she had this thing and was pulling it out, because her all of a sudden pulling out a sword like this like just threw me. It was just this brand new piece of information and I was like, oh shit, okay, I guess she has a laser sword. I'm here for it. But there was no setup for this, and it was just sort of like, it's like if Chekhov's gun just showed up in the third act, you know? Like it was like, oh god, okay, I guess there was a gun around. So I was like, oh god, okay, I guess she has a laser sword. So just something there to show that it's about to come, that it's about to happen or something like that. And then we have this little interaction here. I love the chibi stuff. Chibi stuff's super cute. And then we have this, and then let's see, what's my notes? And then I think, is there something else that I wanted to I think I've talked about everything. Oh, no. Here's the panel. Okay. So right here. So this attack. So the Heavenly Meteor Shower attack, I actually really enjoyed this, but I wanted her hair. The only thing I would say is that like I really wanted her hair to be longer. Like start here and then just really go fucking ham with like because I will say that like because the background is purple and stars and stuff like that like her hair doing this doesn't seem that unique other than it's getting longer. So like go full like nebula clouds and stuff, like just really go ham on her hair, but also just make it like really, really long, like super ridiculous anime long, and then lead into this and then the attack. Just because it was so short, the impact, it didn't feel as impactful as like the setup and colors were making it out to be. And so like I think this just needed more zhuzh on it to make it more important, make it more of like a, you know, like a Sentai attack with random explosions and squibs and you know, dye packs exploding in the air behind her. Space issue again. Okay, yeah, it was another thing. Okay, well that again, that's a very fair limitation. Maybe started underneath the text. You could have done that. Big fan of long hair panels. Yeah. Oh hell yeah, yeah. No, I was just like, I just saw this and I was just like, you need it. It needs to be longer. I need to see a whole like Milky Way galaxy coming into this attack. But yeah. So other than that, it was solid. The action wasn't as. The action kind of did stuff like I talked about earlier, where there was a lot of like stiff poses, and that the effects and coloring was kind of doing a lot of the work for the impact. There was a lot of like impact lines and effects and stuff like that helped, but but like the physicality of the characters wasn't selling a lot of the motion in the scene. And so it just kind of, sometimes it just sort of awkwardly felt like people standing around shooting lasers out of their hands. You know, this is fun. This is a fun shot right here. But yeah, but other than that, but it looks great. And again, really strong. Admit it's your first action comic. Okay. I mean, hey, if this is your first action comic, well done. I want like a more technical word for this so that like it's more clear what I'm saying. But like dynamic lines in a character, like motion lines and stuff in a character, like feel really unintuitive and weird. You know, like it's let's see. Did you ever keep doing the guess and OG authored genres thing? Oh, I ran out of time last time. And I'm going to run out of time today too. I don't have... So, no, I haven't, because I've just taken too long in the reviews. Supernatural. Ah, okay. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. There's a lot of like monster-inspired designs in the aliens, I would think. But no, but like dynamic action lines, like I've seen some people where they have well, they'll be like, you know, where they're just like talking about like the line that like goes through the character. You know, this is an animation thing, but where it's like, you know, a straight line is kind of boring, but then when you do this, or it's like this or something like that, and so then you have, you know, the character like stretched and the, you know, the muscles different, and like you can kind of see sort of like the direction of the line and the motion and the action. That is a hard and sort of like almost obtuse thing to get your head around, and I only know about it in theory. I cannot execute it art wise. So by no means am I like you know, it is not a criticism. It's more of just like a, hey, this is something that's taking away from what could have been more impactful. And I just know that it exists, so I'm pointing it out. But everything else is like really solid. But that is the thing that I noticed with a lot of these, is that like the sort of like the dynamic motion of the characters is not there a lot of the time. All right, and then finally we are going into Dirty Slate. So Kaylin, we're getting into yours. Says nobody ever notices the school janitor, and that's exactly what the janitor wants. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, Waffles. Salem. Aha. Well, cool. I will just then I will refer to that as I will pronounce it correctly now. Thank you for the correction. But yeah, nobody ever notices the school janitor, and that's exactly what the janitor wants. However, the peace is ruined when a group of thugs show up after school. Has the janitor's identity been compromised? This is basically if John Wick was a school janitor. And that is it. Like, there's not a lot of story here. There's a lot of intrigue, which is effective. Like, it's effectively done. And it is by no means a criticism that there's not a lot of story here, because this is really all this really needs to be, is just a fight and an introduction to this guy. And we get all the information that we need in this webtoon, in that like and that he's in hiding, he's dangerous, he's been compromised, and now the rest of the story is going to be him dealing with him being compromised. And then everywhere in between is just him kicking the shit out of people. And that's just great. I will say that Salem, you did a design thing that I really loved, that I was really sad that you stopped doing like by halfway through. So here you have like the sort of story panels where there's rain, and then your background has rain, and then that just continues on, and then we see the character. I really wanted that to be throughout the whole thing, because to me it felt like immersive in the world that you were creating, in the space that you're creating. Yeah. And like, because for me, when it shifted from rain in the background to no rain in the background, to me that was like, oh, did they move inside? And that way there's no more rain. So like you'd see rain in a window or something, but you wouldn't see it on them. But no, it's raining the whole time. I only put that to start in the end because I thought it might be distracting as if it was in the action parts. No, I thought it was distracting that it wasn't there. Like I felt like the lack of it was denoting some sort of shift in your scene. And then when it wasn't, then I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess what the fuck's going on? Well, it was a good idea. You just needed to commit to the good idea. But yeah, so like that was something that I missed. And then so like to me, it also like added to the rain that was in the panels as well. But that's sort of like, again, thinking of your background is also part of your story. And so that was a really interesting idea. Let's see what else. Oh yeah, and then I liked the use of cleaning supplies as weapons. I had kind of wanted more of that a little bit, like just some weird, like we get the broom, we get the mop, but just like, he gets like a squeegee and does something, or like, yeah, here he starts a fire. Could have made it longer. Well, it's not so much longer as like you could have just sort of like sort of take stock of what you have put in here, right? Like this is what you gave him. This is the arsenal that you made available to him. Is there another shot of his cart? Trying to remember. No. So we'll just go back to this one. But yeah, so here's like his arsenal that is available to him. I kind of crammed it into 5 days, but if I made it longer, definitely would use more supplies. Okay. Well, yeah, then but I had hoped to see more things. I also like this where, where you kind of broke the fourth wall with the fire here. Like this was another sort of playing again with the idea of like the rain in the background, where it's like, oh yeah, the background is also a part of the story, and this is bleeding into it, so that makes the fire a lot more intense on the guy than if it had been contained in a panel. And so this was really effective right here. And like what you could have done too is like you could have had like the rain going, and then like around here, because it's fire, like the rain is evaporating, so you don't have it, and then you go back to it being fire, and then just again giving sort of the a visual representation of what like extreme heat does to rain, and that would have been really again, it was just like all the pieces are there, it just didn't quite come together. And then bonk, and then on the phone. I thought this was funny just because he's like, it's not a cigarette, it's a lollipop, just sort of like a very for kids, One Piece dub sort of a thing. Especially after him kicking the crap out of everybody. That was a really nice sort of juxtaposition of like something whimsical versus something extremely dangerous and violent. But yeah, solid entry. The action was, it did feel short, and I think that was in part because it was mostly just action. It was mostly just action, and also, it was short too? Okay, cool. Well then, it was just 60 panels. Okay. But it didn't need to be longer than that though. because like I said, you don't have a whole lot of story. Most of what's being told is, or most of the information we're getting is just him fighting, and so like you don't need to stick around longer than that. So this was an appropriate length, and it was definitely a fun, solid entry in this whole thing. And that is this week's run on Web Wednesday. Great stuff. Really happy that everybody came out. I'm glad that the Discord thing worked out too, because Jesus Christ, OBS is being a prick. I will be looking into that and getting that fixed for future streams. So I don't think I'm going to be using. You have no control over that. It's fine. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to be using this Discord channel again. So this was kind of a one-off thing. If I continue to have OBS problems, then I'll have to use it again, or maybe I'll just use the other, like just not Streamlabs, but the other OBS, and maybe that'll have to work. But because this is just a little bit too janky, and it's not as freely available for everyone to just kind of come in and do their thing. So yeah, but yeah. So next week I'll be trying to get back on Twitch. But yeah, thanks for everybody coming out. I'll announce the next round of Webtoons on Monday. Until then, I guess I'll see you guys next week. So, bye. Yeah, thanks for coming out, guys. Bye. Hello again. Hey, Green Day. Oh, you sweet. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. What kind of dump truck did you give this guy? Jesus Christ. That ass is so big. Oh my God. Oh my God. Paul the editor loves it. Oh my God. It's so big though. It's so big. Right? Like it's like, oh God, it's almost distracting. I almost want you to like take it back a little bit. Oh, jeez, that's Kim Kardashian's ass. Yeah, like I I think it's funny that he's got a big ass, but not like that big. That's just a little bit too much for me. But Jesus, that's such a funny picture. Oh my. Holy, oh man, we're almost done. We're episodes 21 and 22 today. All right. Well, hey, hold on. I'll close OBS.